The wind across the high plains of Wyoming does not just blow, it scours. By mid-November, the soil has usually turned to iron, and the average backyard garden has been abandoned to the skeletal remains of tomato cages and withered vines. Most people accept this as the natural end of the season. They retreat indoors, resigned to the wax-coated, tasteless produce hauled in by semi-trucks from 3 states away. But there is a different way to live. It is a method that does not require a $1,000 glass greenhouse or a complex heating system plugged into the grid. It relies on the physics of the earth itself. Imagine walking out into your yard when the thermometer reads 5 degrees Fahrenheit. The air is so sharp it stings the back of your throat. You brush 6 inches of dry, powdery snow off a wooden lid, lift it, and find a vibrant, deep green world of spinach and claytonia. This is not a miracle. It is the result of working with thermal mass and the steady, unyielding heat of the ground. It is the forgotten art of the cold frame pit, a low-profile structure that uses the density of the soil to keep life thriving while the rest of the world freezes. Independence begins with the realization that the ground 4 feet below your boots stays at a constant temperature of 55 degrees, regardless of the blizzard howling above. To tap into this, you start with a shovel and a heavy steel crowbar. You're digging a rectangular trench, roughly 4 feet wide and 8 feet long. The work is slow. You feel the weight of the damp, dark earth on the blade of the spade. Each shovelful of dirt represents a deposit into a thermal bank. You dig down 30 inches, deep enough to get below the frost line where the soil ceases to be a frozen crust and begins to act as an insulator. The smell of the earth is metallic and ancient, a sharp contrast to the sterile air of the winter morning. Once the pit is excavated, you line the interior walls with heavy cedar planks or stacked fieldstones gathered from the edges of your property. These materials are not just for structural support. They are chosen for their ability to hold on to the energy of the sun. Cedar resists the rot of the damp earth for decades, while stone provides the massive density required to regulate the microclimate within the pit. The first system of this Arctic method is the sun-sinking slope. You do not build a flat roof. You construct a frame that angles toward the southern horizon at exactly 35 degrees. This specific angle ensures that the low winter sun strikes the glass surface perpendicularly, allowing the maximum amount of light and heat to penetrate the pit. You use reclaimed storm windows, heavy and thick, salvaged from an old farmhouse. The glass is cold to the touch and ripples with the imperfections of age. When you set these windows onto the cedar frame, you create a seal. The air trapped inside begins to change immediately. Even on a day when the outside temperature is well below freezing, the sun hitting that glass starts a silent, powerful process. The light waves pass through the glass and strike the dark soil and the stone walls. This energy is converted into heat. Because the pit is recessed into the earth, that heat has nowhere to go. It is hugged by the surrounding soil, which acts like a thick wool blanket, preventing the warmth from dissipating into the freezing atmosphere. To enhance this effect, you introduce the second system, the liquid battery. Inside the pit, along the northern wall, you place 5-gallon buckets painted a flat, matte black. You fill these with common well water. Water has a remarkable thermal capacity. It can hold more heat than almost any other natural substance. During the 8 hours of daylight, these black containers soak up every stray photon. The water inside slowly warms, climbing from 40 degrees to nearly 70 by late afternoon. You can feel the radiant warmth coming off the plastic if you hold your hand an inch away. As the sun dips below the horizon and the temperature outside plummets toward zero, the liquid battery begins its shift. It slowly releases that stored energy back into the air of the pit. This prevents the internal temperature from ever dropping to the killing point. While the outside world is locked in a brittle, crystalline freeze, the inside of your pit remains a soft, humid sanctuary. The plants you choose for this system are not the delicate peppers of summer. You are growing the iron-willed survivors. Consider the red Russian kale. Its leaves are thick, fringed with purple, and covered in a waxy bloom that protects the cells from ice crystals. When kale is grown in these cold conditions, it undergoes a biological transformation. To prevent its own juices from freezing, the plant converts its starches into sugars. This is a natural antifreeze. It also makes the kale incredibly sweet, far superior to anything found in a grocery store. You also plant mache, often called corn salad. It is a small, rosette-shaped green that looks like a tiny velvet flower. It thrives in the dim, cool light of December. Its roots are shallow but tenacious, pulling nutrients from the rich, dark compost you layered at the bottom of the pit. You can smell the life in here, a mix of damp peat, decomposing oak leaves, and the peppery scent of fresh greens. It is a smell that should not exist in the middle of a Midwest winter, yet here it is, contained within a few square feet of earth and glass. The maintenance of the system is a matter of observation rather than labor. On days when the sun is particularly bright, the temperature inside the pit can rise too high, potentially wilting the greens. You prop the lid open just 2 inches using a notched piece of scrap lumber. You hear the faint hiss of the warm, moist air escaping into the cold. This simple ventilation prevents fungal growth and strengthens the stems of the plants. Then, as the afternoon shadows lengthen, you close the glass tight. For the truly brutal nights, when the forecast calls for 15 below zero, you add a final layer of protection. You take a heavy moving blanket or a thick piece of rigid foam insulation and lay it directly over the glass. This creates a secondary barrier, trapping the day's heat inside the liquid battery and the stone walls. You're essentially tucking the garden in for the night. There's a profound sense of sovereignty in this act. You are no longer dependent on a global supply chain for your nutrition. You have created a pocket of spring in the heart of the Arctic, using nothing but gravity, light, and the thermal properties of the ground beneath your feet. You stand back and look at the structure. It is low to the ground, barely visible against the snowdrifts. It does not demand attention. It does not require electricity. It is a silent, heavy engine of growth. The weight of the glass, the density of the water, and the insulation of the earth work in a perfect, quiet synergy. You reach down and pull a single leaf of spinach. It is crisp, cold, and bursting with a flavor that is both earthy and bright. This is the reward for the blisters earned while digging and the time spent calculating the angle of the sun. It is the realization that the environment is not something to be fought, but something to be understood and harnessed. You are living according to the rhythm of the planet, finding abundance in the most unlikely of places. The snow continues to fall, burying the driveway and the neighbors' yards, but beneath your hand the soil is warm and the harvest is ready. This is the foundation of a sovereign life, the ability to feed oneself when the world says it is impossible. The third system required to master the sub-zero harvest is the subterranean air core. While the liquid battery manages the immediate air temperature, The air core addresses the deep chill that attempts to creep through the floor of your pit. You begin by laying a foundation of 4-inch perforated drainage pipe, the black corrugated plastic flexible enough to snake through the bottom of your trench. You bury this pipe beneath a 6-inch layer of clean, 1-inch river stone. This is not mere drainage. It is a heat exchange floor. The air inside the pipe is buffered by the thermal mass of the stones and the constant 55-degree heat of the deep earth. On the coldest nights, the natural convection of the earth pushes a slow, steady stream of slightly warmer air through the stones and up into the root zone of your crops. You're essentially plumbing the geothermal heartbeat of the planet directly into the soil where your seeds germinate. The stones feel cold to the touch in the open air, but once buried, they become a heat retention blanket that prevents the root systems of your plants from ever entering a state of dormant shock. To maximize this subterranean heat, you integrate the biothermal engine. This is a traditional method updated for the modern homestead. Before you lay your final growing medium, you deposit a 12-inch layer of fresh, straw-heavy horse manure or shredded deciduous leaves mixed with grass clippings at the very bottom of the pit, beneath the river stones. As these organic materials begin to break down, the microbial activity generates a slow, steady aerobic heat. You can push a thermometer into this layer and see it register 70 or 80 degrees while the air above is freezing. This is a living furnace. The smell is not one of rot, but of a rich forest floor fermentation. This heat rises, passing through the river stones and the perforated pipes, warming the roots of your Siberian miner's lettuce and your bull's blood beets. The beets, with their deep burgundy leaves and sturdy stems, respond to this bottom heat by pushing deep into the compost, pulling up minerals and concentrated sugars that would be lost in a traditional frozen garden. Now, consider the synergy of these systems as the winter deepens into January. The sun is at its lowest ebb, yet your sun-sinking slope captures the ultraviolet light with surgical precision. The liquid battery of black 5-gallon drums sits against the back wall, their surfaces slick with condensation. In the center of the pit, the soil is a dark, crumbly loam, a mixture of screened topsoil and aged compost that feels light and aerated. You have created a closed-loop environment where every element serves 2 or 3 purposes. The water barrels provide humidity as well as heat, preventing the dry winter air from desiccating the tender leaves of your Swiss chard. The stone walls provide structural integrity while acting as a heat sink. Even the snow itself, which you have piled against the northern and eastern exterior walls of the wooden frame, becomes a powerful insulator. This is the igloo effect, using the trapped air pockets within the snow to shield the cedar planks from the biting sub-zero wind. Implementation of this method requires a shift in your daily rhythm. You become a steward of the light. In the morning, when the sun finally crests the tree line, you go out to the pit. You might need to use a small, stiff-bristled brush to sweep the frost from the glass so the light can enter. You watch as the white crystals turn to liquid and run down the panes. By noon, the interior of the pit is a vibrant, humid oasis. You can hear the slow drip of water hitting the dark earth. This is the time to harvest. You use a small, sharp pair of garden snips to take only what you need for the day's meal. You cut the outer leaves of the spinach, leaving the central crown to continue growing. The leaves are thick and turgid, full of the water that has been cycling through the system. There is no wilt here, no signs of the stress usually seen in store-bought produce that has spent days in a refrigerated truck. As you work, you notice the insects. Even in the dead of winter, a few ladybugs or small spiders might be seen moving across the stones, drawn to the warmth and the life of the pit. This is a functioning ecosystem, not a sterile box. The plants themselves, the claytonia with its small heart-shaped leaves, and the arugula with its spicy, nutty bite, act as air purifiers, cycling the carbon dioxide and keeping the environment fresh. You feel the grit of the soil under your fingernails and the warmth of the sun on the back of your neck as you lean into the pit. For a few moments, the reality of the Wyoming winter disappears. You are in a different climate entirely, one of your own making. You're not just growing food, you are growing resilience. The final stage of the Arctic method is the preservation of the thermal cycle during the polar vortex events. When the news warns of temperatures dropping to 20 or 30 below zero, you do not panic. You have prepared. You take a few extra bags of dried autumn leaves and stack them around the perimeter of the glass frame. You place a piece of heavy, silver-backed radiant barrier insulation over the top of the glass, shiny side down, to reflect the rising heat back into the soil. Underneath these layers, the liquid battery and the biothermal engine continue their work. Even in total darkness, the heat stored in the water and the fermentation of the compost will maintain a temperature of 38 degrees inside the pit. The plants will wait. They will slow their growth, entering a state of quiet preservation, holding their sugars and their nutrients until the sun returns. This is the essence of sovereign living. It is the refusal to be a victim of the season or the economy. By building this pit, you have claimed a piece of the earth and made it productive for 12 months of the year. You have used basic physics, thermal mass, solar angles, and microbial heat to bypass the industrial food system entirely. There is a quiet, profound power in sitting down to a dinner in the middle of a blizzard and eating a salad that was harvested only 20 feet from your kitchen door. The ingredients are not just vitamins and minerals, they are the tangible proof of your independence. You have mastered the cold, not by fighting it with fossil fuels and expensive machinery, but by understanding its limits and using the earth's natural warmth as your shield. You stand in the quiet, snowy yard, the glass of the pit reflecting the orange glow of the setting sun, and you know that you are prepared. The winter is no longer a season of scarcity. It is a season of quiet, hidden abundance, secured by your own hands and the forgotten wisdom of the Arctic harvest.